Making any movie is really hard, but making a movie that actually delivers a satisfying ending and sends audiences home happy? Well, it's perhaps the hardest part of the entire filmmaking process. And where recent movies are concerned, none have struggled quite as much as this bunch. I'm Ewan, this is What Culture, and here are 10 recent movies ruined by their third act. Number 10, The Creator. Gareth Edwards' The Creator is nothing if not an impressive audiovisual spectacle, even if his writing clearly can't match his technical skill as a filmmaker. And this becomes most apparent in the movie's chaotic, sloppy finale, which strains to cram a whole hell of a lot into less than 30 minutes of screen time. Protagonist Sergeant Taylor, played by John David Washington, learns that his wife, Maya, played by Gemma Chan, is comatose, and AI simulant Alfie, played by Madeline Una Voiles, was modeled after their unborn daughter. Revelations we're barely able to linger on before Taylor heads off on the climactic mission to destroy the space station known as Nomad. Predictably, it culminates in Taylor making a cliched heroic sacrifice, and the film hurriedly cuts to credits barely a minute later, ensuring we've got almost no time at all to sit with what we just witnessed. Edwards clearly has a fantastic eye for visuals, but the creator desperately needed a more finessed writer who would let the impactful moments breathe and not make the final stretch feel so breathlessly perfunctory. Number 9, The First Omen. Okay, so again, in no way does The First Omen's ending make the whole film not worth watching. In a year of great horror movies, it's very clearly a standout, with the overall lasting impression being, how the hell did Arkasha Stevenson get away with that in a totally unnecessary studio prequel to a beloved 70s classic? Stevenson's approach is so confident, it's impossible not to admire. Coupled with a brilliant performance from Nell Tiger Free as a young nun being drawn into a web of satanic conspiracy, a script that examines religiosity as a means of control and power, and some of the gnarliest imagery we've had in a studio horror in recent years, and you're left with a very commendable piece of cinema. And just to caveat the subsequent discussion even more, I was not looking forward to this movie in the slightest. The original Omen is one of my favorite films of all time, and the idea of anyone tinkering with the cemetery reveal in any way, shape, or form, and I won't spoil it for those who are yet to indulge in that classic, really annoyed me. It's like making a Halloween movie and telling the origin of Michael Myers, which Rob Zombie already did, and it was terrible. Don't explain away the terror of a good mystery is basically what I'm trying to say here. And all of that's a shame because The First Omen ends up falling for those exact same pitfalls as it barrels towards its conclusion, which is bungled, protracted, and introduces two demystifying retcons to the Richard Donner original. There's a nice sequence inspired by Possession to cushion the blow a little bit, but ultimately, it can't overcome those familiar and all too frustrating prequel tropes. Number 8, Ghostbusters: Frozen Empire. The most recent Ghostbusters movie certainly gets off to a slow start and doesn't exactly offer the most consistent fun in the franchise, but at least we all knew a wacky finale was coming up featuring the OG Ghostbusters, right? A big part of the third act's problem, though, is that after such a meandering first 2/3, the last 30 or so minutes are forced to cram in way too much. The Phantom God Garaka doesn't actually freeze New York City, the entire concept of the movie that the trailers focus so heavily on, until the final 25 minutes, at which point Frozen Empire becomes a frantic, messy sprint to the finish line. The final clash with Garaka is over in a flash. The original Ghostbusters don't get to do much but stand around and fire their proton packs, and then the movie just sort of ends. Total protonic reversal. It's a shoulder shrug of a finale that perhaps suggests this one was hacked up significantly during post-production, but either way, kind of a bummer that Ghostbusters is meandering after getting its little comeback moment. Number 7, Bob Marley, One Love. Bob Marley biopic One Love admittedly had its fair share of issues throughout, but Kingsley Ben-Adir's committed performance at least tried to elevate its garden variety Wikipedia page biopic format. Yet what truly sunk the film was its refusal to give the audience the one thing they wanted to see: a glorious cinematic rendition of Marley's iconic One Love peace concert. Instead, as Marley takes the stage for the concert, the film abruptly cuts to black, throws up a title card detailing the singer's 1981 death, and then rolls the credits. Rather than get a glossy, big-budget rendition of the concert Bohemian Rhapsody style, the best this movie offers up is a few brief glimpses of archive footage from the real concert in the credits. Yeah, to call it a thunderous anticlimax would be an understatement, ensuring that this already profoundly mid-movie couldn't even deliver the bombastic, crowd-pleasing send-off everyone was expecting. Number 6. The Hunger Games: The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Though the bulk of the recent Hunger Games prequel, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, was actually considerably better than expected, it all fell apart during that excessive epilogue of a third reel. The actual Hunger Games conclude at the end of the second act, with almost the entire final hour of the movie taking a sharp left turn to follow Coriolanus Snow, who, as punishment for helping his tribute Lucy Gray Baird win the games, is forced to work as a peacekeeper. The pacing for this portion of the film is all over the shop. The early peacekeeper scenes are aggressively slow, but the climactic confrontation between Snow and Lucy feels far too rushed, especially as it signals Snow's transformation into the villain we better know him as. This final hour really makes it tough to go back and rewatch the movie, because it's basically a leaden albatross hanging around its neck. Number 5. The Fall Guy. There's a profound sense of irony to the Fall Guy's deeply messy third act, given that the movie itself is ultimately about a filmmaker, Jodie, played by Emily Blunt, struggling to complete the tricky third act of her space opera called Metal Storm. Director David Leitch has been upfront about the fact that the movie started shooting without a scripted finale, and this is painfully clear from the end result. The giddy fun of the first two acts hits a brick wall when the Fall Guy remembers that, oh yeah, it actually needs to have a plot. It all starts to come apart at the seams following the revelation that stuntman Colt, Ryan Gosling, is being framed for murder by movie star Tom Ryder, played by Aaron Taylor-Johnson, and producer Gail Meyer, played by Hannah Waddingham. The third act then covers Colt's revenge plan to sneak back onto the Metal Storm set and trick Tom into confessing his crimes while shooting a stunt sequence. The idea isn't awful, but the execution is awkward and somewhat convoluted, and it goes on way too long. Not gonna lie though, that surprise Jason Momoa cameo at the end was pretty damn great. Otherwise, the Fall Guys finale was too exhaustingly overcooked for its own good. Number 4. Lisa Frankenstein. Zelda Williams' flawed but fun horror comedy Lisa Frankenstein is a blatant example of a movie that just had no idea how to land the plane in Act 3. The film follows a teenage goth girl called Lisa, played by Katherine Newton, who finds herself falling in love with a recently reanimated Victorian-era man, played by Cole Sprouse. And though there's plenty of amusement to be had in the movie, Diablo Cody's script totally loses its way in the final stretch. With Lisa and the creature having caused numerous deaths throughout their whirlwind relationship, Lisa finally decides there's only one way to escape, and asks the creature to electrocute her to death in her tanning bed, which he does. Lisa dies, but the final scene shows the creature reading poetry to a newly resurrected Lisa, seemingly allowing the pair to live on as undead lovers. While that's kind of sweet, this all happens in the final 10 minutes of the movie and feels hugely rushed, as those scenes clarifying Lisa's intentions were left on the cutting room floor due to studio notes, or something like that. Again, the ideas aren't awful, but the rough manner in which they're presented here ends the film on a massively clunky note. Number 3. Maxine. The finale to Ty West's X trilogy was a rock-solid vibes movie for its first hour or so, but when it came to wrapping up both the film and Maxine Minx's entire journey to stardom, Maxine sadly fell way short. First and foremost, the masked killer whodunit resolves in a resoundingly predictable fashion, and leads to a surprisingly dull, clumsily staged shootout finale ahead of an ending that feels both rushed and unearned in relation to the rest of the story. After the consistency of X and prequel Pearl, Maxine fumbled the bag big time on the home stretch. And though Mia Goth's commitment was never in doubt, she still gives a brilliant performance here, this trilogy capper ended on more of a shrug than the triumphant fist pump fans were very understandably expecting. Now, some online have defended the uneven finale as a nod to the campy Giallo films the movie is very clearly homaging throughout. But come on, that feels like an all too tidy get out for West, who is clearly capable of better storytelling than what he delivered here. Number 2. Abigail. Horror comedy Abigail was a solidly entertaining time for the most part, even if there was a clear disconnect between the filmmaker's intent to conceal its vampiric twist and the marketing's decision to just not do that. All the same, there's a lot of grisly fun to be had courtesy of the gory action and game ensemble cast. But when it comes time to wrap things up, it's clear the screenwriters really had no idea how to end the story. It all starts to fall apart once vampire Abigail, played by Alicia Weir, escapes confinement and the audience is bombarded with a bevy of scarcely thought out plot twists and loosey-goosey action. Love that phrase, loosey-goosey. Criminal mastermind Lambert, played by Giancarlo Esposito, is revealed to be a secret vampire, and Frank, played by Dan Stevens, randomly allows him to turn him into a vampire as well, only for Frank to suddenly turn on Lambert and kill him. Abigail and protagonist Joey, played by Scream's Melissa Barrera, are then forced to team up and take Frank out, after which the film ends with a hilariously tacked-on cameo from Dracula, played by Matthew Goode himself. The final half hour of the movie is just a chaotic assemblage of things happening, even though the internal logic is shaky at best, and it feels like it should have ended at least twice before it actually does. And number 1. Longlegs. Osgood Perkins' Longlegs is certainly one of the most distinctive horror films of the entire year, and for its first hour or so, delivers a consistently stylish and unsettling mood exercise as a stoic FBI agent, Lee Harker, played by Micah Monroe, tracks down the titular serial killer, played by Nicolas Cage. The use of changing aspect ratios and 16mm style perspective to simulate the constraints of childhood memory and trauma is also genius, particularly in the film's opening scene, which I'm gonna go on record to say is one of the scariest, most impactful horror openings we've gotten in a while. It's when Perkins feels the need to actually explain what's going on, though, that Longlegs begins to lose its way, even if it's in service of pre-established visual motifs. A colossal third-act exposition dump reveals that Lee's mother, Ruth, played by Alicia Witt, has been Longlegs' secret apprentice for years, in exchange for keeping Lee safe. From here, we learn all of Longlegs' full MO. He makes dolls imbued with satanic magic, has Ruth deliver them to the next family he plans to kill, and then lets the magic dolls possess the family members, causing them to kill one another. Stopping the movie dead to reveal all of this feels like a disservice to the more confident filmmaking leading up to it, and it doesn't help that it's all stuff that's really easy to infer before that point. Again, the intent is clear. Perkins peels back the 16mm style constraint in these flashbacks to illuminate the horror and danger that lurks out of view of a child's world, with Lee now fully aware of her mother's misdeeds, but it is momentum killing and not all that visually kinetic, at least compared to the imagery that was unleashed in the preceding 75 minutes. The film's final scene recovers slightly, layering dark humor with a weighty moment in which Lee isn't able to shoot the doll given to the Carters, but it's kind of devoid of tension. Still a great film overall, obviously, and one of my favorites of the year, but it is a shame that the final third couldn't equal that incredible introduction.